Welcome back everybody to KSP Interstellar Quest, a series in which we are trying to get to the promised worlds of KSP 2 in a modded version of KSP 1, and of course it's also paying tribute to Scott Manley's epic series that got me into KSP. The last episode was quite a short episode, but I'll promise I'll make it up to you today with a slightly longer one, so on average we should be good. You're looking at Mun Base Alpha, the first module, the Angelica, named after Angel 125, who created this awesome mod called Buffalo Rover. And Buffalo Rover also has space station parts in it, but it also has rover parts, and something that will turn into a base, as you will see in a minute. We're launching on a trusted Atlas rocket, 20 tons to low carbon orbit, but I think this is about 5-6 tons all the way to the Mun. And the transfer stage, or the second stage, is more than happy to function as a transfer stage as well. And yeah, so we're in orbit. It looks a bit like a rover, I've got to admit. But if you look at it very closely, you would know that we can actually remove the wheels and the whole rover part beneath it, like the chassis and the wheels and stuff. It can drive underneath it and leave the whole structure upright as a base structure. Of course, we need to make a small correction turn, and we need to set up our control points. Because, once we made the deorbit burn, we're switching allowed control to the top node, and we're switching to monopropellant descent engines that we've attached directly to the system. There we go, trying to figure out why RCS is not working. I apparently did not enable it properly. You can see the booster going down, crashing into the moon surface. I'm sure mission control should have something to say about that. But this is a nice way of landing your base modules. It is a lot of work. You would need to mod, or at least I need to mod, a precision editor, which is a mod which allows you to not only look at the central point of mass in your structure, but also in your center of thrust, your center of lift. Well, we're not needing lift. Whoa, that was a close one. But in this case, center of mass and center of thrust is super important. So in either configuration, I'm making sure that the center of thrust is pointing directly through the center of lift, enabling us to control the vehicle. It does spin up a weird rotation that I manually have to balance out. But this is probably for the cameras to do some terrain detection or something like that. Regardless, we are down. We are a couple of 100 meters away from the base, but we can drive over there, which turned out to be very, very tedious. So I'm not going to show you all the footage about that. It's not reaching the ground as promised because the stilts still have to go down. But well, we struggle a bit with the driving part, so we said, well, let's wait for that in the next time. We still have the surveyor rover nearby. God, that thing is loud. It's making its way over there. Obviously, it can't dock while it's still on the high stilt stance. But we can keep it nearby. So we want to keep all the equipment nearby. Maybe use the cameras on the surveyor to do a visual inspection of our base, how it all came down, and whether it's in the correct position. We're launching the second part of our base, Mun Base Alpha. It's not Mun Base Alpha 2. It's the second part of Mun Base Alpha. Again, on a powerful, very powerful Atlas rocket. With a bit of wobble. I'm not sure what causes the wobble, but it's on its way to space. The second part is much similar to the first part. So on board, I don't know by heart exact the layout of all the modules, but we got a laboratory on there, obviously, to do all the science we need to do on the Mun. We got a habitat module, a galley module, so we can sleep, eat, and have some leisure time. But we also got a logistics and a workshop module. I think those are on this particular part. As well as a docking bay. You already saw the ramp and the 2 docking ports on the sides, which allow us to connect rovers directly to the base or expand the base, which, as you will see in a moment, will turn out to be an extremely tedious exercise. But I'm cutting a bit of footage here and there because you've seen me do orbital insertion and lunar insertion several times by now. We are making our way to orbit, and the second module is on its way, which is again also balanced in mass, where the thrust of the second stage is pushing directly through the center of mass. This is why it's slightly off-center on this staging ring, as you see. This is all for good measure. And the second part also has a ladder from the Banji 10's mod called, I don't remember the name, But it's a cool mod. It's a cool mod that allows you to have stairs and other base modules. We're right on target, and I'm doing a bit of manual correction here to make sure MacJab actually puts us close to the target. Most of the descent is guided by MacJab, but I do use RCS and manual control to make sure we land right on the dot, because sometimes MacJab is a bit lazy with that stuff. I also found that this whole deorbiting burn thing is perhaps not the proper way to do it. You can see me in bombard the site, which I'm sure NASA would have things to say about, but it also makes it just makes it hard. We are slightly off center. You see me trying to move the landing site around, but then I said, well, forget it. We're just going to put it down there and drive her over there. And since we had such a hard time with the official mountain goat worlds from the mod, I folded back on the wheels that are also on the Surveyor over, because I know they will work on the Mun. I do have to check the suspension though, because this thing is considerably heavier than the wheels that we used on the Surveyor. But well, it works. We get closer, and you can see all the brakes going up and down. We got some heat exchanges on there, and that's because the third part of the base will probably generate a lot of heat. We got capacity to store heat and transfer it between heat loops. This is from the mod heat something. I gotta look it up. It's a recommended mod from Angel 125, heat control, and it will. It's going to be necessary to manage heat properly when you have nuclear reactors and you have drills and ISRUs. So this turned out to be extremely difficult. You can see me try to move the base around, even pushing the rover around a little bit around in the process, and then discovering that I've got the docking ports up mounted the wrong way around, which means they'll mount in the VAB, yeah, but nowhere else. So we'll need to fix that at some point either. We've got Angelica, we also got the counterpart. Lucifer is the third part of the bane, which will not go upwards, but will go downwards. This one has the drills, the ISRUs, the nuclear reactor. It's favorably hot. This one's going to generate a ton of hot heat. So it's got some super new fancy cooling systems that are recently unlocked on the tech tree, and I've never used them before, so I hope I did all the calculations properly in the VAB. We'll see. If not, the system will overheat and shut down. But we got a fission reactor on board, which should allow us to finally get through the nights. Up until now, we're only been able to do short lunar durations. The lunar day is about 3 days of Kerbin days. So we had some excursions and some exploration, but we never went all the way through the night, and that is something that this new infrastructure will allow us to do. Of course, Kerbals are oblivious for food or power or heat in gameplay, but we'll pretend that they are. There's mods that allow you to simulate all that, like snacks or Kerbalism, but I've played with them for a couple of times, and this time I thought, let's go have a little bit more stock-like experience. Regardless, the third module is making its trans-lunar injection, and we can see it blast off as the Mun rises over the horizon. Isn't that a pretty sight? Now, to balance this craft out, I used a different technique, so I kept the center of mass and the engines at sort of the place that I wanted them to, but then used fuel tanks to move the center of mass around, which means they're all in strange and wobbly places, but if correct, it should work, and it should drain all the tanks simultaneously, so until they're very empty, I don't see why this should not work. We've made our inclination change around the Mun. I'm very careful with my monopropellant because I don't have a lot of it, so I'll support the reaction control wheels a little bit to get in the right position, but I'm not going all out in burning all that monopropellant constantly. We're getting ready for the deorbit burn, which should happen any moment now. You can see me, we are lined up right ahead for the trajectory, and we speed down to the other side of the Mun, aligning ourselves for our deorbit burn. Similar technique, we'll use the transfer stage to do the majority of the burn, and then use the lander to finalize the descent. Though it could land on its own, it's got enough delta V, but hey, we've got all this delta V in the upper stage. Why not use it? then get rid of it and use the engines on the lander to the final one, and then use the fuel on the surface to refuel a lander or something like that if we have to. And we are decoupling, changing the control point to the small docking port on the top part of the lander, activating the 4 liquid-fueled twitch engines. So we've switched from monopropellant to liquid fuel because I want to have both fuels on the station. This maneuver did put us a little bit off course. We're about 1 kilometer off course and we're landing just on the other side of the crater rim. And here you can see me extending the landing legs directly into the exhaust of the descent engines, which causes the stilts to blow off. So we'll guess we need to send up a repair mission for that. And here we are landing down on the surface. We've got all this landing stuff down. I do hope the wheels are powerful enough to get us up there. And we did save more than enough monopropeller to keep our craft upright, even in emergency though. They can handle this kind of angles, not a problem. Well, the driving is driving. And you know how that goes with parallax in this particular configuration. It takes a very, very long time and is very tedious. So I think I spent about an hour in game time driving around the surface till I got to the rim of the crater, back to the part that we flattened out with Kerbal constructs in one of the previous episodes. And we're driving our way over to the other base modules, which are perfectly lined up. Well, not perfectly, they're sort of lined up. They're somewhere down here. And again, these docking ports are of course the other way around, but don't worry, after 16 tries of swapping them around like a USB cable, I figured out how to have the proper way forward. She won't be able to dock anyway because there's a control node on the Unity module on the place where she would need to dock. But we can try to put her in the right position before we send the crew up there. The crew that has been diligently training for their long duration Mun mission. And the first mission where we will not be sending a pilot. So, taking off from the launch pad, as you can see, hitting the launch towers on the way up, is Segan D6. On board is Merlin Corman, the architect of the Kerbal space station that has done such great work up there, reconfiguring all the parts and doing all the construction works in the space station. So she's a veteran of the space domain, but has not been to beyond low Kerbal orbit. And on board is also a new scientist, Alcast Kerbal. And he's been specially selected for the geology on the moon and is going to oversee lunar operations of turning regolith into precious liquid fuel and oxidizer, as well in monopropellant. And in the future they should be able to dig up helium-3 in quantities as well. We've spotted it on the sensors. We know it's down there. We don't have the right containers yet, but we should be able to reconfigure some of the containers that are actually up there to make that happen. The Vulgane Heavy is still more than capable of putting the Segan D6 into a translunar or transmooner. I think it's going to call it transmooner. Well, it is a moon, technically. Translunar would still be okay. But we'll call it a transmooner injection burn. And we'll send the spacecraft on their way. I did notice that most of the landings were slightly off target, some by a couple of meters, some by a couple of 100 meters, some by a kilometer like the last one. So I decided to this time not use the transfer stage for any on-orbit operations regarding the descent. So it did the transmooner insertion burn, but we're using the actual stage that was designed for it to land, and which will dig into our fuel reserve. So this stage should be capable of doing it. It's using a descent stage, much like the Chinese will do and the Soviets had planned to do, that will be crashed into the lunar surface. I do consider this a kind of a design risk because your dropping stage is close to a base. I don't think that's a smart idea to do. But we'll see if we can keep this design around long enough. Regardless, they're making their descent burn and we're getting a pretty accurate landing spot. We're, I think, about a dozen meters off, so that's definitely a thing. Also, the Segan D6 does not have RCS thrusters for minor course corrections, which I think is also an oversight on my part. But we can use the reaction control system to point in the right direction and then use the gimbling of the engine to put us sort of on the right descent course. You can see me scanning the terrain for these two little arches that we've built down there using Kerbal constructs, because they're visible way earlier than any other geological feature or base feature. There they are. This is where we know we should be going, and in a moment I will switch on MacJab's automated guidance systems, which will show you a real-life landing prediction, and try to maneuver my descent node a little bit around into the spot, instantly crashing my craft, and ripping off the solar panels and falling down. In the back you can hear the other parts still continuing. What happened is that I did detach the descent stage, but it kept firing and push us around. I always forget to shut off the engine before actually going off. But well, the craft is mostly intact. We are locking the batteries of electricity, and using the workshop we should be able to produce some new solar panels. So I don't think a rescue mission is yet in order, though KSP may think differently. We should have landed right there, so we have Alka's Kerman running over to the intended landing site to put up a flag that we can use as a reference for future launches. A flag which for some reason had been placed there by the previous team that went down there, but no, it was gone. This is a strange safeguard, and this one will also be gone in a couple of hours. But she decides to climb it and have a gander around before she moves back to, or not back, she flies over to the base, of course, to see what is out there and inspect the lander that is down there and that's not driving away because of some wheel problems. Only to find out that she's not an engineer, so she can't probably do anything about that. So she boards one of the modules, and we start to drive the units around, have to adjust all the wheel strength and invert some of the engines and the balancing, and she's here to oversee, I guess this is Mirlong then, to oversee the parking of the two modules, only to find out that the docking ports are in crap, or the other way around. So you can see me shift this around and around before I find out that this will not work. If you ever use the docking ports from the Buffalo mod, they have these little pins sticking out. That is the correct way facing forward. So use the thingy with the pins, which I thought were meant to go into the module, but they're actually the part that's the connecting part. KSP should really just make some colors on the attachment nodes, like green and red, saying this part goes wherever it goes. Anyway, I can swap some of the details around, and I can store some of the other parts. We brought some additional spares on this one. That's not a big problem. It's just annoying that you have to do it in this particular way. And the RCS is capable of lifting the entire craft and wobbling it around until they lock. And this seems like something I did in a couple of seconds, but that's not really the case. I spent half an hour trying to get these two together. And here is the Lucifer module driving over to the base construction site. You can see the fusion generators, and we lost some of the fuel tanks for no apparent reason. I don't know why that happened, but it happened. Yeah, no, the docking ports are of course also the wrong way around, but remember we blew up the stilts upon descending. Mirlong has not forgotten, so she flies over to the surveyor rover because she's gonna need some wheels and some inventory space to pick up the new stilts that they brought along. I really like this rover. I don't like how it skids over the terrain actually, but it's got a decent speed, it's got decent stability. It's got a small logistics module there, which will prove very useful. So the Seeker D series is a really cool lander that has some cargo capacity. We brought a rover on one occasion. We brought some equipment that we could not use because we did not bring an engineer on the other occasion. But you can see in the left corner we brought over some new spare parts for the Lucifer module, but also some ground science that we can use, and a new module that we're attaching to the surveyor, which allows us to find, I don't know, sciencey. I think that's a geological instrument which allows you to find resources or resource concentrations. It's got some other parts there, and yeah, Sagan is not strong enough to lift the entire module out, which you will need to do if you want to have the Delta V to get home with that. So she needs to bring over her friend next time, and maybe together they can remove that container, so the spacecraft will have enough, or not enough, like less mass, not enough mass to get to orbit. So adding the new stilts, super cool. Again, not that easy because the stilts were sort of wedged between some parts, so we're removing the engines to make sure we don't collide into stuff. So adding stuff there in the VAB is a lot easier than doing it on site. But here we go, we are lined up. We've got the docking ports the proper way around. We are there, and we're using the RCS to lift the base and wobble everything around, and we have achieved dock. Lowering the stilts, now we just have to remove the final rover part, and of course we could clean up a ton of parts on the base just to make it faster, but so far we're okay. I added some parts together and a control module, and now the rover should be able to drive from underneath the base, and we can lower the entire thing, and Mun Base Alpha is ready for operation. A couple of purposes here: geological studies, also long-term effects of Kerbals in space, but mainly trying to figure out if we can do in situ resource creation. So we have a drill that's going to drill up the ore, and we lost the other drill. I think we need to build another drill because we lost one. Well, regardless, we got a drill, and we got some converters there that will help us to generate all kinds of fuel and stuff in there. At least that's what we think will happen. But we can also dock our surveyor rover. Yes, this was planned episodes in advance. This should all be able to dock together, hopefully. And if you set docking force to 200% on both nodes, it's easier. You still got to wobble. And this is me wondering, should I switch to the station and add RCS on that one to flip her around? But that's exactly when I dock. So, Mun Base Alpha, operational. See you in the next episode.